You won't believe what that little boy whispered beside the broken fence that morning. He looked up at the rancher with hollow eyes and trembling lips. My father, 3 times a day, he said, and then fell silent. The wind rolled across the prairie like it carried secrets. Even the horses seemed to stop chewing and listen closely. Folks around here thought they had seen every hardship imaginable. But nothing prepared them for what those 4 words truly meant. So stay with me, because this story shook our entire region. And I promise you, by the end, you'll understand why. It was early spring in the Wyoming Territory, cold and restless. The rancher, Thomas Hale, had built his land from dust. He wasn't a cruel man, but he was strict and guarded. People respected him, yet few dared question his decisions. That morning he rode out to inspect the northern pasture. Storm clouds were gathering, dark as spilled ink overhead. Near the boundary fence, he noticed something unusual. A small figure stood alone beside a tired old mule. And that is where everything began to change. The boy couldn't have been more than 8 years old. His clothes were torn, boots cracked from endless walking. He held a tin can tightly against his chest. When Thomas approached, the boy did not run away. Instead, he stared at the rancher with desperate courage. That kind of look comes from surviving too much too soon. Thomas dismounted slowly, trying not to frighten him. The prairie wind carried dust between them like a curtain. Then the boy spoke those haunting words again. My father, 3 times a day, he repeated softly. Thomas frowned, unsure what the child was confessing. He crouched down, lowering himself to the boy's level. What happens 3 times a day, son? He asked gently. The boy swallowed hard and pointed toward the hills. He goes to town, drinks, and forgets we exist. Those words struck harder than a cattle stampede. Thomas felt something tighten deep inside his chest. Because he had once known a man just like that. You see, out here in the Wild West, survival demands strength. But strength without responsibility turns into quiet cruelty. The boy explained how his father left every morning. At noon he returned briefly, shouting and slamming doors. By sunset he disappeared again into the saloon lights. 3 times a day, hope rose and fell in that cabin. 3 times a day, promises were made and broken. 3 times a day, a child waited for love. And 3 times a day, disappointment arrived instead. Thomas listened without interrupting, his jaw set firmly. He knew the saloon in town all too well. He had lost friends to whiskey and pride before. But this felt different, more personal, almost familiar. The boy's mother had passed the previous winter. Since then, the cabin echoed with loneliness and anger. Neighbors heard shouting but rarely interfered in family matters. That was the way things worked in those days. Still, something about this situation felt wrong. Instead of riding away, Thomas did something unexpected. He told the boy to climb onto his saddle. They rode together toward the small weathered cabin. Smoke barely rose from the crooked chimney. Inside, broken plates littered the wooden floor. An empty bottle rolled near the fireplace stones. Thomas removed his hat, taking in the harsh reality. The boy stood silently, used to the chaos. And that silence spoke louder than any cry. Now here's the part that stunned the entire region. Thomas did not confront the father with fists or threats. He did not drag him through town in humiliation. Instead, he saddled 2 horses before sunrise next morning. When the father stumbled home at dawn, exhausted and bitter, Thomas was waiting outside with calm determination. You ride with me today, he said firmly. The father laughed at first, thinking it a joke. But Thomas did not smile back. They rode far beyond the usual grazing lands. Past the river bend and into rocky hills. Thomas showed him graves of ranch hands lost to drink. He spoke of families shattered by stubborn pride. He told stories of sons who grew into hardened men. Men who swore never to forgive their fathers. The father's laughter faded into uncomfortable silence. The prairie wind felt colder than before. Truth can be sharper than any sheriff's bullet. Then Thomas did something even more shocking. He offered the father steady work under strict conditions. 3 meals provided daily, wages kept in trust. But only if he stayed sober and present. 3 times a day, you choose differently, Thomas said. Morning, noon, and night, you choose your boy. The ultimatum spread through town like wildfire. People expected anger, maybe even violence. Instead, the father lowered his head in shame. Change did not come overnight, my friends. The first week was filled with trembling hands. The second week brought harsh words and near relapse. But Thomas never humiliated him publicly. He kept him busy repairing fences and mending barns. The boy began visiting the ranch each afternoon. Slowly, laughter replaced silence around that cabin. 3 times a day, effort replaced absence. And hope began taking root again. The town watched carefully, whispering in markets. Some said Thomas was wasting valuable resources. Others claimed the father would never truly change. But month after month, the man remained steady. He stopped entering the saloon altogether. He started attending church beside his son. The transformation became impossible to ignore. It wasn't just about sobriety anymore. It was about reclaiming dignity and responsibility. 1 year later, during the harvest gathering, the father stood before the entire community. He thanked Thomas with a voice thick with emotion. He admitted his failures openly and without excuse. My son saved me, he confessed honestly. 3 times a day, I nearly lost everything. The crowd remained silent, deeply moved. Because redemption stories were rare in those parts. And they were witnessing one firsthand. Thomas never considered himself a hero. He simply remembered what neglect feels like. Sometimes the Wild West demanded more than toughness. It demanded courage to care when others walked away. That little boy's whisper changed 2 lives forever. And it reminded the region of something powerful. Discipline with compassion can rebuild broken families. 3 choices a day can rewrite destiny. Even in the harshest lands under endless skies. So when you hear someone say change is impossible, remember this story from the dusty Wyoming plains. Remember that strength can guide instead of destroy. And remember that someone out there might be waiting for one person to step in with courage. If this story moved you, let me know below. Share your thoughts about forgiveness and second chances. Subscribe for more powerful Wild West stories like this. And don't forget to like and share with someone who needs hope.